Now, this is the first lesson on the Renaissance medicine. Now, Renaissance period, we look at the years 1500 to 1700. And what this lesson is going to look at is the cause of disease and look at what changed and what continued. So change and continuity. Now, what we need to do this is we need to understand what the term Renaissance means, to explain the ideas that continued in regards to disease and change, and evaluate the differences between the ideas by looking at one of those 4-mark exam questions. So, first and foremost, what does Renaissance actually mean? So I'm just going to go through this, and then I'm going to invite you to pause the video so you can answer the questions, just to make sure that you understand it. The Renaissance was a period that began around 1453 and lasted 1700. The exam board very much say 1500 to 1700. But as I say, you know, there are some things in the we class as the Renaissance period, the medieval period, but such as the printing press. But don't worry too much about that. The term Renaissance means rebirth, a time of developed thinking, considering more rational explanations. So basically, it's a time where people started to think more for themselves, and they started to actually develop new ways of thinking. So they weren't dominated by the beliefs of the medieval period. Through this period, governments had more of an impact in how the country was run, and they were a lot richer, more prosperous. This led to money being put into medical experimentation to develop ideas on cause, treatment, and prevention. But the government had a much bigger part to play. Due to this new care and development of medicine, there were more universities set up, approaching medicine in a more scientific manner. And straight away, you've got to be reading this thinking, right, this isn't good for the church. The church are obviously going to lose power the more scientific society becomes. Alongside new thinking, there was a new way of communicating ideas. In 1450, the printing press was invented, allowing, and just to make sure that we get this right, because that's not actually 1450, it's 1440. So just be aware that when you're doing this, you realise it's 1440, not 1450. The printing press was invented, allowing for quicker and more accurate publication of ideas, so more cause of disease being discussed. Furthermore, medicine was benefited due to new herbs coming from the New World in areas like South America. The new herbs were coming, which will allow the apothecaries to develop their remedies. And also at this time, the 1500 to 1700, it was a time of significant war, and it could be argued that new injuries also allowed for medicine to progress, as there were more urgency to find cures for life-changing issues. So if you wanted to do this properly and you want to do a little bit of a revision task, if you pause the video now and answer questions 1 to 8. When was the Renaissance? What does Renaissance mean? Why did prosperous governments help medicine? The newfound interest in education led to what being set up? How would you describe the new approach to medicine? What was invented in 1440? How did medicine benefit from the discovery of the New World? How did war help medicine progress? So if you pause the video now and answer those questions, I'm going to go through the answers very quickly, but as I say, pause it first, then get the answers. So the answers. When was the Renaissance? 1453 to 1700. What does Renaissance mean? Rebirth. Why did prosperous governments help medicine? You could afford doctors, and actually they got more involved, less laissez-faire. The newfound interest in education led to universities being set up. How would you describe the new approach to medicine? Very scientific. The printing press was set up in 1440. New World led to new ingredients. And how did war help with medicine? New types of injuries to treat. So that's an overview. What was the Renaissance? If we look at our first outcome, describe what the term Renaissance means. Brilliant. So the next part, why were there new ideas? Now, a lot of people tend to forget that in this period there was a lot of new ideas, but that's all they were. there was a lot of ideas, but very little sort of practical elements to it. So the Renaissance period is seen as an idea where there's lots of ideas, but very little practicality. Now, the level of practicality comes a lot later on in the period, and also going into the industrial period, which is the next unit of work. So there's some new ideas about disease and illness. And what we need to understand is, firstly, what old ideas were being challenged. So what ideas from the medieval period were beginning to be challenged in this period? New ideas. What were the new ideas? What were people thinking? Who were they? What inventions were important? And then what were the greatest changes in ideas or practice? I've already kind of gone through that. But remember, the Renaissance is a rebirth of thinking, a rebirth of ideas. So you've got a list of people here. To be honest, the ones that people tend to remember the most, or the most important one, William Harvey, Thomas Sydenham. You've also got Vesalius, but these are the key individuals here. So let's have a look. Paracelsus, a Swiss scientist, he rejected the theory of the four humours. In the 16th century, this idea was being criticised a lot. And a lot of scientists were beginning to say that disease was separate from the body, which needed to be attacked. So new chemical treatments started to appear, influenced by the popularity of alchemy. So Paracelsus was really important in starting to reject the theory that we need to attack the illness with chemical treatments. Now, alchemy, if you can't remember what that means, alchemy is a key word. It basically means treatments with chemicals. The next person, Girolamo Fracastoro, an Italian physician. Now, in 1546, he wrote a book called On Contagion, and he theorized that disease was caused by seeds that spread in the air. Now, that sounds a bit like miasma, but it really isn't, because miasma is toxic air. Seeds might suggest germs, but this was an idea. He couldn't really take it one step further because there wasn't the real in-depth technology that we have later on. He proposed that epidemic diseases are caused by transferable tiny particles or spores that could transmit infection by direct or indirect contact, or even without contact over long distances. Now, if we think in today's days, it's quite obvious that Fracastoro is talking about germs, but he had no proof. But it does show that people's ideas in the Renaissance period really did take things to the next level. 1628, a new theory was published in Britain which suggests that blood circulated around the body instead of being made in the liver, as taught by Galen. That's William Harvey, but you'll have a separate lesson on. Jan Baptist van Helmont, a Flemish physician. Now, he had an understanding of the digestive system. And people began, and again, this links back to Paracelsus, Baptist von Helmont began to criticize the four humour theory. People stopped believing that disease was caused by eating the wrong thing. Urine was no longer seen as an accurate way of diagnosing illness. So Jean-Baptiste van Helmont is basically going against the concept of the four humours being the main cause of disease. You've then got Robert Hooke, an English scientist and head of the experiments at the Royal Society. A new microscope was being developed, which allowed for a much clearer magnification. Micrographia, published in 1665, showed many detailed images, including a close-up drawing of a flea copied from a magnified image. Now, this is great. The fact we've got a piece of technology that begins to work. The only problem with this is that the microscope only allowed for new ideas. It was not powerful enough yet to help with practical aspects. The people could see new things, but what could they do with it? At this stage, very, very little. And you've got Sydenham, who again you're going to have a bit more on in a future lesson, who in 1676 wrote the textbook Observations Medici, and it theorised that illness was caused by external factors rather than the humours. And then you've got Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. Now, microscopes were developed even more by 1863, and it allowed Leeuwenhoek to look at animalcules. And what that means is, what Leeuwenhoek did was he scraped in between people's teeth, and he saw images of little tiny little animals, little particles scraped from the teeth. Now the images weren't clear, but it was the first recorded observation of bacteria. Okay, now what Leeuwenhoek does is he takes the work of Robert Hooke one step further. Now what we need to understand is, how does all of this fit into which old ideas were being challenged? What new ideas did we have? What invention led to new discoveries? In your opinion, what are the greatest changes in medical ideas or practice, and why? Again, if you want to do this as a revision task, pause the video, look at the timeline, and do questions 1 to 4. Only pause the video if you want to do this. It's good practice to look at some ideas, look at some information, and start doing some comprehension. So, I'll go through the answers. What old ideas were being challenged? So the first, 4 humours, was being ridiculously challenged at this stage. It was all based around theory, and it was something that was shocking at this time, because this was a rebirth, though. It meant that people could challenge it. It meant that the church were also losing power at this stage, so people didn't feel as scared against ideas. So forced upon them in the Middle Ages. Galen's theory that blood was made in the liver. Now, Galen, he is an individual that was really questioned in this period, especially by a man called Vesalius. Vesalius theorized that 300 of this guy's ideas were wrong. Stop believing that disease was caused by eating the wrong things. So it goes back to the 4 humour concept being rejected, and urine was no longer seen as an accurate method for diagnosing. New ideas. So those are the old ideas being challenged, but they have to be replaced with new ones. You can't say that you disagree with something without giving a solution. So these are the new ideas and discovery. The idea that disease was something separate to the body that needed to be attacked. New chemical treatments influenced by alchemy. Disease caused by seeds in the air, which was theorized by Fracastoro. Blood was circulated around the body, not from the liver, which was theorized by Harvey. Better understanding of the digestive system. Illness was caused by external factors, not the 4 humours. And then you've got Leeuwenhoek's work in 1683 with the first bacteria being seen through his animalcules theory. Key invention, very simple, microscope. It was developed over time and allowed Leeuwenhoek to see that picture of a bacteria for the first time in 1863. Now, why? That last question, was it in ideas or practice? Very simple, it's in ideas. But why? People's knowledge of the body, the anatomy, was improving, but there was no way of treating internal problems on a living patient yet. So there was no way of treating things as effectively as people would like. Lack of quality medical instruments such as microscopes, theories needed proving, and until the microscopes got better, it couldn't be done. The general public still believed in the 4 humours, so physicians still used them. Patients wanted treating, not experimenting on. People did not like the fact that people were going against the settled ideas in society. It's going to be really hard to make a whole population change their mind. And the church, increasingly being challenged, encouraged medical students to look beyond Hippocrates and Galen, but it was based on ideas, not practical aspects. You might, in paper 1, section B, the first question is either going to be a difference or similarity question. Now, this is a tough question. And, I'd be very surprised if you got something like this, but it says, explain one difference in the belief in the cause of disease, 1250 to 1500, 1500 to 1700. Key word here. If you start talking about treatment, prevention, you get 0. You've got to give a difference in these time periods. So the way in which examiners mark this, you've got level 1, level 2. Level 1, simple comment and general information. So it's a very vague answer. Level 1 suggests you might not know too much about it, or you might have just forgotten. Level 2 answer is features of the period are analysed to explain a similarity or difference, and specific information to support the comparison. So in my opinion, the way in which you would do this question is, in the years 1250 to 1500, one of the main beliefs on the cause of disease was. So give, in my opinion, don't just give one word there. With this type of question, give 2 lines of solid evidence. And then this meant that you explain it and do exactly the same thing. So if you were just to do these first 2 lines here, you'd get 2 out of 4. And then if you do the other 2 in detail, you'd get 4 out of 4. Okay. Now, that's something you could practice. So if you wanted to practice answering that, it's really good practice to get the 4 markers done in about 5 minutes to make sure that you don't overdo it in the exam. Just make sure that you are keeping to the point and keeping specific aspects from each time period very, very clear in this response. Now, this isn't the only lesson I'm going to do on the cause of disease, because we are going to look at Thales, Sydenham and Harvey, and we're also going to look at how the cause of disease, people's beliefs of disease, was spread using the printing press and the impact of the Royal Society. But this is the first lesson on looking at continuity and change in what people believed in the Renaissance period.